Welcome back. In today's episode, we pick up with part 2 of the interview with Sharran Srivatsaa. Normally, this is the part in the episode where I kind of give you a little teaser of what's to come. Sharran took his company from $250 million to $2.5 billion in 5 years, a 10x. I'm not going to talk about one particular thing that he says. In the next 20 to 30 minutes, he's going to share so many concepts with you, it will blow your mind. Sit back and enjoy.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. You know, so many entrepreneurs struggle with the concept of allowing somebody else on the team to do something. I've known you for, 7, 8 years now, and you're just a stud when it comes to getting stuff done. How do you get to the point where you go to your team, here, handle this. I've got too much on my plate. How do you get to that point, and how do you do it effectively?
There is a, thanks for the kind words. There is this concept of I think they're called these Russian Babushka dolls. Have you seen them?
The ones that fit kind of in each other?
Yeah, exactly. So there's one that fits inside the other, that fits inside the other, that fits inside the other, right? And I think a lot of times what I've seen entrepreneurs do, what I've seen principals of companies do, is they hire in the Babushka doll model. They hire in the model where the second in command, or even a partner, or even if someone coming to is the second doll under the first doll. And the greatest entrepreneurs are the ones that are the tiniest dolls inside, where they know that, wow, Thor, he's awesome. It doesn't matter what it takes. I want Thor on board, because I know that if I can provide Thor the leadership, if I can provide Thor the collaboration, if I can provide Thor the platform, the rope to go hang himself, and be the bulldozer, Thor will make his way. Thor is a bigger doll than me. So I've tried really hard to find my place in the organization, and my place in the organization right now, Thor, is they call me the GCI guy. I do growth, culture, and innovation. Meaning that's all I do. That's my singularity of focus. My singularity of focus is growth, culture, and innovation. If the topic is not growth, culture, or innovation, I don't care about it. I just hit forward to someone else has got to deal with it, because that's not what I do.
Yeah, back to that single focus. That's right. Awesome. And that's where so many business leaders get off track. 100%.
And I think that's the hard part, because you absolutely can't do everything yourself. It's just impossible. And a lot of times business leaders will want something done 100%. And I would tell you this, the 90% rule will win every time. I love the 90% rule. I love when a team member can build and implement and execute a strategy that is in my head, but they can implement it 90% of the way. We win.
Yes.
We win every time. And I think for most entrepreneurs, unless they see the manifestation of their vision in absolute completion, it drives them insane. It drives them insane.
I played a little game with myself just literally 3 days ago, and I said, if I was no longer able or willing to do anything in the company, who within the company would have to do it? And literally, I had to sit there and I had to get rid of every single thing on my task list. Now, there are a couple things I couldn't get rid of, obviously the interview process, but it was amazing. I got rid of 60% what was on my list, and I got it on somebody else's. And they're actually going to be able to do a better job at it than I was.
Thor, I know your listeners want something actionable, something focused. I'll give you something actionable that completely that's changed and leveraged my time significantly. And it's actually very simple. So I was working with my coach, and I was talking to her about kind of the psychology of my calendar. And I said, I'm really getting stressed about my calendar. And so she looks at me and she says, "Don't you have an assistant?" I said, "I do. She's fantastic, but I don't think she can do it." She's like, "Stop. She's like, "Are you listening to yourself?" Right? And so we created this. She's like, "You're going to spend 4 hours with Liz and, help her understand how you think about the world and how you think about your tools. And so I came up with this, and Thor, one thing that just very tactically, very mechanically that a lot of people do is so let's say you and I are going back on a simple email exchange and you say, oh, Sharran, we should get together for lunch or get together for a meeting. Well, what's weird is if I hit reply all and I copy my assistant on it, now my assistant's just going to schedule lunch, which is fine. But what if I wanted to give her some direction without actually you knowing what that direction was? So what I would do is I would hit reply all, I would copy my assistant, I would send, I say, Liz, please help schedule lunch with me and Thor. And I would hit send, but then I would text message her or email her separately saying, hey, Liz, Thor's great, but let's kind of do it over the next 3 months, and let's do it on a Wednesday, and let's only do a 30-minute lunch when I'm in Newport Beach or something like that. I would give her more guidance. And so she said to me, which was her idea, she said to me, hey, Sharran, this is really, frustrating for you. Why don't we do something where we set up a code? So I won't give you the code per se, like, anybody can do it, but we have a code. And so I can hit reply all, and I can say, Liz, love to have lunch with Thor, agenda 1.1.1.4. And that in my world means urgency is really high. It's, a lunch in Newport Beach. It needs to be on Wednesday or Thursday, and it needs to be on 2 hours long. So Liz knows exactly what to do. And Thor, you as a recipient have no clue what that means, right? But I only set up the system once. And from that day, Thor, till today, every meeting has been scheduled perfectly.
Nice. Very nice. Along these same lines, peak performers know when to say no, and they say no to more things than they say yes to. How do you determine what to say yes to and what to say no to?
This is a great question. And Thor, I was very guilty of saying yes to a lot of things because I just love.
Sure, we all have.
Yeah, I just love. I love new opportunities. I love contribution. I love creating new relationships. I just love to do more. Something happened maybe 2 years ago. I was reading this amazing book by this coach up in Canada called Dan. His name is Dan Sullivan. Really cool guy if you've not heard of Dan. And Dan came up with this idea called the 25-year framework, which is awesome. And essentially what he's saying is the goals that you have are not unrealistic. It's only the timeline that you want to accomplish them that's unrealistic. So he said completely remove the timeline from the picture and dream big and create these goals that are so huge, but give yourself 25 years to accomplish them. And I was like, how would I build and create goals for a 25-year period? So what I did was me and my partner, we created a 25-year charter. We created a 25-year charter for our investment fund. And it's amazing. We took a full quarter to build that. And the idea is very simple, Thor. 25 years, and each year has 4 quarters. So that's 100 quarters. And the idea is if you make 1% progress per quarter, given that there are 100 quarters, you're going to get to your goal in 25 years.
Wow.
Really, I mean, once you kind of internalize that, just a phenomenal framework. Ever since, I shared with a few people, a lot of people have kind of, taken it and called it their own 1% rule. But the funny part is it's not even mine. Like I took it from Dan Sullivan and read his book. But you talked about when you say yes and when you say no. And the question is very simple. We have this 25-year charter that has like 5 buckets in it. And if the opportunity or the idea or the initiative doesn't fit into that 25-year charter, because if I can't see myself engaging, working with it, or adding value to it in this 25-year period, I just don't do it.
Yeah. I literally have a compass on my desk, and it reminds me, is what I'm doing right now moving towards my ultimate goal, or is it off course?
Amazing.
Yeah, so I'm always trying to figure out, is this moving me closer to my goals or further away? And it's only doing one or the other. Do not lull yourself into a sense of false security or sense that it's neutral. It doesn't have any effect. Everything matters.
Right.
So tell us about an epic failure.
It's probably not as epic as it will sound like, but it was really a tough situation for me and how it all shook out. So I'll kind of abstract out the names and names of the ventures, but there was I was in business with a few partners, and based on a certain set of business dealings, one of the partners said that they would have, they would create this economic arrangement with me for our partnership, and we, based on the trust, et cetera, that I had with this partner for several years, I didn't get anything in writing, and we thought that everything would kind of be, hunky dory. We'd be working together. We were sharing clients, and every step of the way, I got kind of cheated out of big amounts of money that could have changed the financial bloodline of my family forever.
Yeah, I think I think I know the case that you're talking about.
Yeah, and the one thing that I got from the store was, it's not the lesson learned. The lesson learned is anyone that has high integrity on any business dealing is going to be very comfortable putting their thoughts on paper, putting an agreement together. Anyone. And in fact, a lot of times what I actually say to folks is, hey, we don't even have to have an agreement. Let's actually start, so let's start with a mutual understanding. Let's start with a memorandum of understanding. You put down your 5 bullet points and I put down my 5, and let's see if we can come to something. Because the biggest understanding and the biggest lesson that I learned was that when your thoughts get put on paper, there's so much clarity. And no one can argue what it actually meant. And the reason, Thor, it was almost devastating for me is that in part, my wife kind of second guessed my ability to make good judgment decisions. She said, hey, if you had told me, I wouldn't have trusted that guy. And so that was hard on me. That was hard on me. It was early in our marriage. It was hard on me because I'd already started planning financially for that, for what was due to me, and that didn't come to fruition, and that changed the course of our lives. But that lesson is what kind of brought me here today, because every single thing that I have done since then, you better believe that every single thing is papered collaboratively, papered cleanly, and written out. Even if it was just a understanding email, if nothing else, it was put down on paper so you can get mutual agreement. And I think that was the biggest lesson I learned from that down point in my life.
Yeah, I had similar situations like that where I just always expected others to behave the way I would behave. And I know that sounds, childish almost, but I just had a sense that, if we shake hands and we're looking at each other, you're going to behave like an adult, like an honest adult. And it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't fault anyone for it. It's more, I think it's what I've learned. It's good business practice. Yeah, it's just good business practice. And so it goes back to Thor, those 3 fundamentals, which are good process drives good results. And our process is we write up agreements.
Yeah.
So that's all it is now. And it's nothing else, right?
Yeah. And I like Ronald Reagan's term, trust but verify.
Right.
I mean, I went through a transaction where I purchased a company, and 6 weeks after I purchased it, I went to get some of the inventory off the top shelf, and they were empty boxes. Not even thinking that, hey, maybe I should take the boxes down and see if there's actually inventory in there like they said there was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Live and learn.
That's right.
What do you wish that you could have done better 10 years ago or started 10 years ago?
I never realized the impact of goal setting, and even deeper, of personal psychology. I believe that today I'm a better person today because I'm stronger, sharper, and more determined and more skilled psychologically. And I think that's conditioning. I never believed that. I never knew that. I thought your psychology was something that was, given to you, that came to you by birth, that came to you via your genes, and it was just a part of kind of your culturescape, a part of your upbringing. I never knew Thor. I had no idea. I had no exposure. I had no coaching. I had no mentoring on how powerful just realigning and believing in my personal psychology. It's not about goal setting. It's about the psychology of resilience. It's about the psychology of purpose. It's about how you can just turn a negative situation into a positive one, right with the power of your model of the world. And I never realized that. I never realized the stories that we tell ourselves on why we can and can't do some things, why we are victims or why we are heroes. No one had ever taught me that. And my first introduction to that was as you know, was through you and Tony Robbins. I never knew even that existed. And the funny part is, even after I was introduced to it, I didn't really know the mechanics of how to implement it in my life until I hired a personal coach and who walked me through the mechanics of how to actually rewrite your story, how to actually work and condition your psychology on a day-to-day basis. And all that it does, I believe it does two things. It creates the significant human curiosity to be better, and it creates the significant confidence to do better. And I tell my wife this, Thor, what I have today, what I've learned today, what I've a lot more to learn from in its infancy, I want to try to give that to our children. And we always say the two things that we want to give our children are the gift of curiosity and the gift of confidence. The gift of curiosity and the gift of confidence. And man, if we can just give them those two things, I think that just goes to the very heart of having a great psychology.
Wow. I mean, I didn't even realize you were going to say that. You know, and it's so interesting because here you are, you have an MBA from Vanderbilt, you were ex-Goldman Sachs, and you're saying one of the most interesting turnarounds or times in your life was actually understanding that psychology and that shift at, what was that, 5 years ago?
Yeah.
And that's when you took Teles from $250 million to $2.5 billion. You know, so many people get wrapped up in this, that psychology stuff. It's just kind of woo-woo stuff. Well, here's a major executive that is telling you, invest your time in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. You were a great part in introducing me to all of it, and I don't know how many hours you spent trying to get me to understand it, man. I understand it now.
Well, thank you. Tell us some of the worst advice you've ever received, and you took it not knowing that it was bad advice.
You know, that's tough. I gotta think through that a little bit. There's several pieces of kind of interesting advice that I got. The one I remember, there's one piece of advice is I got this advice that said that, you know, you've got to be 99% selfish but 1% selfless. 99% selfish and 1% selfless. They say, you know, we are humans that work in our own model of the world. We do things for our own utility. As long as you continue to kind of take care of yourself, take care of your family, but at the end, just, you know, think about the world from a 1% selfless perspective, you'll do really good. And there were parts in time in my life. I mean, I've gone through parts of my life, Thor, where I was a jerk. I was 99% selfish. I was a jerk. And it's so funny. I was teaching tennis, and one of the teaching pros was telling me, you know, you want to be 99, and this was not even related. He was telling me, you want to be 99% selfless and 1% selfish. And I was like, wait a minute, that's the complete opposite of what I've heard before. And he talked to me about how the first thing that does is it takes away the component of keeping a scorecard. Because I think that folks that are, you know, not selfish, but self-absorbed or self-focused, keep a scorecard. They're like, you know, Thor helped me. Thor gave me an introduction to this person. So, oh man, I got to give Thor something back. There's a tit for tat. There's a reciprocity. There's a need for the reciprocity built in at all time. Even though reciprocity is a very human trait,
yes.
The scoreboard is such a painful thing. And I have a lot of friends who kind of keep the scoreboard. Like, they'll call me and say, hey, I love your help with this. And I say, absolutely, no problem. Happy to help. Happy to visit with you. And then at the end of the conversation, they say, well, what can I do to help you? And, you know, that essentially is, I appreciate that. However, the last 30 times they called me, they didn't finish the conversation with what can I do to help you. But this time when they asked for something, they did the polite thing of asking me what they can do to help me, which is fine. But I've kind of taken it to a, you know, I think about it differently, where the 99% selfless, 1% selfish thing means so much to me these days, because That's why our psychology is so important. That's why we have to stay centered. That's why we have to kind of think about the world that is much bigger than ourselves. That's why the gratitudes are important, I believe. And if we can, that was the biggest turning point where I actually kind of flipped that around and said, hey, being 99% selfless is probably a good thing. And a lot of times, I think that's actually, giving yourself away, being 99% selfless. There's probably a balance there. But I'm trying to articulate the flippant mindset that I never had until I saw that happen. And I'd say that's probably in the last 5 years, heck, in the last 3 years, I'm a better person in the last 3 years. I'm a better friend. I'm a better father. I'm a better husband in the last 3 years. Than I know friends who would not recognize me, who knew me from 10 years ago. I know they would not recognize me today. And that makes me grateful. That makes me proud. That makes me honored that I've grown a little bit.
Yes. Well, a follow-up to that. Tell me about a time in business where you had to make a decision and you knew it was going to adversely affect someone. How were you able to make that decision?
Let me think about that. So there's, man, that's so hard. And the sad part, Thor, I think is it happens. It happens more than it happened in the positions that we're in. We've
got to make the tough calls.
Every day.
Yeah.
I mean, if my CEO always tells me, he goes, hey, if it's coming to us, it means that it's not black and white anymore. It's in the gray. And he's true. He's right, because it's hard. It's difficult. And I don't think you get any better, at doing it, because I think that starts to compromise your humanity. But you do it in the most humble and humane way possible. May it be as simple as, which is not simple, may it be as simple as, letting someone go. I mean, that there are times when I've seen, that they didn't fulfill their obligations, or they were not, we had written them up 3 times. They were not the right fit for the company. We did everything legally and morally and ethically to help them succeed in the organization, but they didn't. However, we also knew them personally, and they were maybe the only breadwinner for their family. And that stuff goes to my heart, because we have this great gift as entrepreneurs to create jobs, to create lives. And it's not just the people who work with us to further the goals of our company. It is they're working with us to create the income so that they can further their goals of their family and their friends, etc. And Thor, it's so hard when you have to kind of know that you're making a decision that's affecting someone's life. And I'd say I don't think it ever gets easier, because it shouldn't, because it brings your humanity into question. And second, the way to do it is to never do it hiding behind call it technology or paper, etc. Right? I think the tough decisions need to be made in person with a lot of our humanity kind of hat in hand, because only then does it allow them to show that you can be supportive, you can be helpful. That was not a clinical decision anymore. And I think a lot of times what I tell our team is, hey, if you have to make a tough decision, you just do it on the phone or make the trip in person. Let's not, we say it very simply, let's not say no on email, right? Like, let's not say no on email. And sometimes we have to, but we just obsess over how we say it, because however nicely you say it is never received well.
Sure.
That only makes it worse. So I don't know if there's ever an easy way, but I think just being thoughtful and warm about it, and going the extra mile to doing it, with warmth and compassion, just makes it more human.
Good advice. What are you most afraid of to try in life or in business?
Wow, that's Not sure if I'm afraid of anything per se. However,
well, let me say this. As entrepreneurs, we're not afraid. We're stressed. Right. Okay, stressed is the entrepreneur's word for afraid. So let me reword the question.
So what causes the stress? What causes the pain? I think one thing that causes a lot of stress and pain is not knowing how to adjust for market risk. Market risk really stresses me out. Market risk doesn't allow me to be the entrepreneur that I am. Market risk just tells me that, hey, there is one component of this entire formula, Sharran, that you have put together that can go against you. And I stress, I stress and I stammer and I struggle with how to adjust for that, how to plan for that. And we spend a lot of time on our team thinking about just a lot of contingency plans. If this didn't work, what would we do? If the market turned down 10%, what would we do? How would that affect our business? And interestingly, Thor, it actually helps me sleep better at night because I think the average entrepreneur is so it's so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They walk into a investor presentation and they paint the rosiest possible picture, but they never turn around and paint the backstop. They never turn around and describe the good process that drives the good results and the cadence of accountability that keeps them on and protects them on the downside. We spend a lot of time on downside protection because we know that anything can turn on a dime.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Now, I guess interest rates would be a big factor in that, correct?
Sure. Yeah. If interest rates rise, we've based on the rate in which interest rates rise, we've seen it affect housing dramatically. But that's one factor, right? Interest rates is definitely a factor.
Could you hedge that?
You can, but if we were a global firm, we could probably hedge that because we would have enough transactions under our belt for it to make sense. But what we try to do is, I'll give you a very simple example. So my partners and I were looking at expanding our business into the San Diego market. And for entrepreneurs on the call, that may be just expanding into a new market. And for 5 years, we didn't want to go into that market because the market is very volatile. Just from a market dynamics are very volatile there. And I said, wow, there's got to be a silver lining here. Let me dig into the data. So after digging into the data, we realized, just from very simple analysis, that there were a certain set of teams of agents that always outperformed the market over the last 10 years. And I was like, wow, regardless of the market, these individuals have always outperformed the market. I like those people. I want to get to know those people. So I spent kind of 6 to 12 months getting to know these people and creating this relationship and helping them understand the Teles DNA. And that's how we launched into a market where we kind of hedged our market risk by kind of diving into the data and saying, wow, these people have shown time and time again that they can outperform the market risk. And I'm willing to place that bet on them because that's the only thing that dramatically stresses me out. And so as the company has grown bigger, our risk management has needed to increase. Like early on, Thor, we were so exclusively focused on that significant growth path. But as we've grown bigger and bigger and have our up and down the California coast, it's forced us to kind of risk manage a little bit because that just helps you sleep at night. It helps you stay in business longer. It helps you live to fight another day just in case that something turns. And market risk is something that really stresses me out.
Every peak performer that has ever lived or will live does one thing extremely well. They know how to take their ideas and execute on them. Ideas and knowledge are not power, but the ability to execute on them, that is real power. If you consider yourself a peak performer and really want to take your game to the next level and truly master the science of execution, I would like to send you some information about our upcoming event, Business Execution Summit. Simply take your phone and text the word BE Summit, one word, to 41411. And I'll send you some additional information on how to master the most important skill you will ever acquire for your life or your business. That concludes part 2 of our interview with Sharran. Please tune in later this week for part 3. Thank you for listening. If you haven't already done so, please head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Also, please share this with family, friends, coworkers, or anyone that could benefit from this information. To make it very easy to share these episodes, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode that you want to share, and you can post it to your timeline. You just might be helping one of your friends on Facebook by sharing it on your page. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. The email is info@thorconklin. While at the website, please sign up for our weekly newsletter with additional tricks, tips, tools, and psychology on how to be a peak performer. Remember, these episodes are anywhere between 6 and 35 minutes and are meant to be consumed during dot time doing other things. Until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.